Vadim, it's good to have you here. Let's start this off by introducing DTEC. What is your company and what are we going to discuss today?
Well, DTEC is the largest Ukrainian utility, and we are operating the thermal power plants as well as we are the largest developer of the wind and solar, and we also operate the DSO and the trading arm. And what we are going to discuss. Actually, I brought some picture with me, right? So, and yeah, you can see some.
Yep.
That's a real life picture which actually resonates in me. So this is not the picture you can see on the internet or something. Some of them are made by at our power plants. Some of them you will see probably first time. Yeah, we will discuss the physical security, and probably at the end of our conversation, I will try to share my, not only my, but Ukrainian experience from the field, right? So how you better get protected your assets, your utility assets.
Okay, and this of course starts with the start of the war. So
Right.
how did the power plants face these first days of war?
Well, the war starts not on 23rd of February 2022 for Ukraine. The war starts in 2014 when Russia actually illegally annexed Crimea, and the Donbas region, which is the east part of Ukraine, were occupied. And DTEC had a couple of power plants at that region, so we already knew how it will look like, right? So we've been prepared to some extent, if you can be prepared, of course, for such course of event. That picture you can see, this is the picture of our first power plant being attacked by Russian. It's called Luganskaya thermal power plant. So as I remember correctly, it was the 21st of February when the Russians start shelling this power plant, and they destroyed the HV 110 kilovolt lines. So just the power plant start working a while for 140 megawatt unit, and then just disconnected from the grid, and we lost control when Russia occupied the Lugansk area.
And then only 3 days later, the 24th of February, a very special day, because then was the day when the trials started for the island status, so to say, that NSOE needed, required from you for the synchronization.
Correct.
So how did you manage that? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, the island mode, which was required by INSI before the synchronization, technical synchronization with continental Europe grid, it was supposed to be done in 2 stages. First stage is in the winter, and the second stage in the summer, because during the winter and summer, the power grid actually in the power system behaves very, very differently, right? And it was agreed that the first test will be done somewhere end of January, beginning of February, and Ukrainian TCO asked Russians many, many times actually to give us a green light to disconnect, because you cannot disconnect suddenly, right?
No,
So you
of course not. Yeah.
Well, you probably don't like to be with Russians, right? So, but you need to somehow to warn them before. That's the actually problem Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are now facing, because they are still connected with the Russian grid. Yep. So, but I remember that Russians every time they just postpone. So, and it was like 24th of November was the last chance to us actually, because it's a February, right? 28 days only, and we need to be done this island mode only on in the winter time. So just we open circuit breakers with Russian grid 3 or 4 hours before the first missiles start flying to Ukraine. So, and we've been ready for that. So just we stockpile a lot of fuel on our power plants. So just before the war, and actually in my peaceful time, I'm building a big batteries, connect them to the grid, and make them profitable, right? So I reset up my battery software to just to support the frequency in the island mode. So we
So actually, you started the war in the most vulnerable states of the grid in complete isolation.
Yes, we did. And yeah, I know that many, not so many, but some experts, I read in some articles, they said, okay, so maybe it's not the good way when you start war, right? But first of all, we didn't start the war, right?
Oh,
just
yeah.
to be very clear, right? So
Uh-huh.
but we enter into the war in a very vulnerable position. You're right. But think about if we've been connected during the war with Russians, and you all know what happened in October, right? So,
Hmm.
so how vulnerable we could be when somebody on the Russian side decided to open, circuit breakers just to put us in the dark.
But I heard that you were supposed to be in the island modus for 72 hours, and it
Yeah,
turned out to be 20 days.
20 days, like
So
more
how
than
did you
200.
manage with that?
It was a real challenge, and the Ukrainian TCO and every energy company, including of course, the not only DTEC but our hydropower plants and nuclear power plants, they are real heroes because nobody expect that. Okay, so it's very hard to run your energy system in the island mode, right? So just we always said, okay, so the more interconnection you have, the more powerful, the more stronger, the more resilient grid you have, right?
Hmm.
So, and you are deliberately disconnect all connections, right? And said, okay, so let us survive 3 days, prove
Yeah.
inside that we can balance our system by our own means, right?
Hmm.
And then suddenly it turns out it's like running marathon and somebody telling you at the end, okay, it's not over yet, right? So we need to get another 42 kilometers and another 42 kilometers and another 42 kilometers. And you say, Jesus, we don't know when it will be ended. So
Yeah.
we run until March 16. And that's that's actually the picture of one of our power plant, and
Yeah.
that's actually the day when we finally get the approval from continental Europe to
So
synchronize.
how does it
And you can
feel
see
now
this
to be
gentleman happy.
we're in sync heartbeat now, with you and Europe. So how does that work?
Well, it's a lot of challenges right now. So don't forget, it's only technical synchronization. It was the first step, only technical synchronization. Then we had the permission to start export electricity, just a little bit because we need to solve some technical issues with the what's so-called low frequency oscillations. I don't want to put us in the red hole of these technical details, right? So
We don't have the time for that. So.
yeah, absolutely. And then we just start importing electricity, but there is no market coupling yet, and that would be the next big step for Ukraine: market coupling with continental Europe.
But then, of course, the war continued, and Russia started its horrible missiles campaign. Tell us a bit more what happened on that horrible day, and Russia hitting your infrastructure
Yeah.
on many places. And
Yeah, it was October 10th. It was Monday when the large-scale missile and drones attacks actually starts. Russia started this large-scale attack on power infrastructure, targeting mostly high-voltage, high-power transformers on 750, 330 kilovolts, and then the power generation assets. What you see is a kind of is a piece of our generator at one of our power plant destroyed by Russian cruise missile, and we lost almost 40% of our generators in Ukraine, so just due to this attack. And this day was particularly bad. It was the 83 missiles launched, and just 43 downed. At that point of time, we didn't have the air defense as we have right now, thanks to our Western backers and supporters.
and what do you expect Russia to do in the coming months? Still more strikes, or?
How this gentleman on yesterday dinner said, "I'm not afraid of Mr. Putin mind," right? So just
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I
you
don't know.
prepare for that.
We are prepared for that. I can say that we are very much prepared right now than we used to be, right? So in terms of how to manage the power plant, how to protect the power plant, maybe I will talk about this later on. But yeah, so it might be that they will, if the war will not be ended by the end of this year, they will relaunch this attack on power infrastructure.
And then this picture. that is the picture that's stuck in my mind when you sent it. Of
Yeah.
course, it's the nightmare for everybody in this business that we end up with a blackout. But tell us what happened on that probably the worst day for you and the electricity grid in Ukraine, the
Yeah,
23rd
indeed,
of
the
November.
November 23rd was the probably the darkest day of Ukrainian power system in in literal meaning actually. So you can see actually this is the surgery in one of the Kiev military hospitals done with the help of iPhone lights, right? So just. And what happened at that day, right? So it was if I remember correctly, more than 70 cruise missiles sent and ballistic missiles sent to the power plants, right? So we lost 3,000 megawatts in more than in less than 5 minutes, and it actually triggered the frequency protection at our nuclear power plants, and nuclear power plants were disconnected from the grid. They are not destroyed, they're just disconnected by the protection relays and so on. But it caused the power system separation, and the TCO managed to reassemble the Ukrainian grid within 14 hours. But these 14 hours, of course, we didn't have the light in many cities. Well, in Kiev, I didn't have a light.
Yeah.
But I have a battery in my home because I'm a battery guy. So
You're
still-
prepared. You're well
I'm cheating.
prepared.
I'm cheating. Yeah, yeah. It's just, yeah. But that was the worst day.
But
of
even
Ukraine.
14 hours is really quick recovery of such a...
Oh, absolutely. That's I'm working in the power sector, and sometimes I even try. I have a hard time to explain to my mom, right? So how we can actually rebuild the system so quickly after the 10 strategic bombers launched around 100 missiles to the power infrastructure. Okay.
And then there you are, still standing strong. I think you all deserve so many compliments that after all these horrible attacks, Russia spent hundreds of millions of dollars to try to destroy your infrastructure, and still the light is on in Ukraine. So how did you manage that? And I think we're all interested in the lessons learned. That's of course a topic that we discuss during the whole day. But if you look back and all the, what are things you would have done different? Do you have any advice here for the audience?
Yeah. Okay. First of all, it's not me. It's our CEO, Maxim Timchenko. He's now in London, in the Ukraine.
I meant it's in the
Okay,
whole
okay.
country. You're still standing.
He doesn't have a beard.
But you do, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So this picture is very important for me and that for all company, because this is the first wind power plant we built during the war, and actually our crews actually assembled the turbines and the Russian missiles and these drones, which we call doodle bags or something. So they just flew over their heads, right? So you can imagine. So it just, I don't want it to end up on a very negative note. I wanted to end up on a very positive note, like saying that okay, we are building during the war, which is I think bring some hope of light, right? For that, if I can briefly go through the practical advices, right? So I would say that the hardening and resiliency is a very different things, right? So you can always say, okay, so let's stash our high power transformers, underground, right? So let's put protective stuff around that. But really, the Russian cruise missile has 500 kilos of TNT in the warhead, right? So you can imagine how thick should be the concrete structure to protect, right? So, and you cannot put the, let's say, 200 MVA transformer under the ground, right? Because of the heating, because of the watering, because of many things, right? So what I would just give as the advice is just allow system to fail, but fail, gracefully, right? So fail in such way that you can actually rebuild it very quickly. We learned this after 23rd of November when our TCO says, okay, enough is enough, right? So we know when the next missile attack will be, right? Because we have this early warning normally, if it's not hypersonic missiles, of course. So we just start de-energizing the power plant, right? So I know it's not very convenient for consumers, right? So, but it's much better, right? So if you are slowly de-energizing the part of your power grid.
Damage control.
Yeah, it's a damage control, right? So, but you can, after that, you can recover much more quickly. That's the first advice, yeah? The second advice is, okay, use the grid-forming inverters at your renewables, right? So I know it sounds strange, right? In many countries, you must use the grid-forming inverters, but during Ukrainian renewables build up, right? So many power stations, many solar power stations, they have these only grid-following inverters, and it was kind of weird situation when you have 20 megawatts of the solar installed, but they cannot actually inject power to the grid because they need the grid to follow, right? So just not very pleasant experience, right? So just we changed that, right? So think about the switchyard design, right? So one of our power plant has a very unique design, not because we did it, it's like, it happened because it was built before, right? So it's a very thin and narrow and long, right? So, and it's very difficult. We've been attacked by 9 cruise missiles at this switchyard, but none of these cruise missiles actually did a significant damage, right? So just because it's, okay, don't build the squarish switchyards, right? So if you want to protect, that sounds obvious, right? So, but not so obvious when you're on site, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have some kind of, well, we have it already. I call it shared inventory, right? So of the power transformers, switch breakers, CTs, VTs, and the other equipment which might get lost during the physical attack, because guys making transformers right now is the ages, right? So there are many different reasons for that. We don't have time to discuss that, but if you wanted to buy transformers, you should be ready to wait and something like 12, 18, and maybe sometimes even 20 months, right? So shared inventory is a very important. I know it's not nobody likes that, right? So, but it is what it is, right? So, and make sure that you have a black start capabilities at your power grid, right? So, like we restart on 24th of November. We restart the power grid from hydro. Okay, so that's the practical lessons.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Vadim, for sharing this experience with us. And well, we can only encourage you and embrace the whole Ukrainian people and hope for the best for the coming months.
Thank you very much.